Okay, I think we're good to go for episode 4 of Hacking with the Homies podcast. So
Yo,
welcome
yo.
back, everybody. We're officially into our month.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I love doing these episodes with you, Jessica. We get to like talk about all kind of good stuff.
Yeah, we hardly get I don't know, it's like ever since the obviously the world kind of changed with a lot more social distancing. It's like that it was like a few years ago, it's like okay, we had more opportunities to kind of be in the same space, just maybe be working on other stuff but still have like random conversations. So, I don't know, it's interesting cuz I found that being like a working from home type of situation and not being on a full-time like dev team, I don't get to talk about technical stuff a lot. Sometimes I'm just sitting here by myself, so I really appreciate it as well.
Yeah. Plus, you have a newborn, so that makes well. I guess he's a year old now, so I
He's
guess he's
crossing toddler territory.
toddler territory. Yes. But for those who don't know us, my name is Mac Hendricks, and obviously I'm here with Jessica, and we've been rocking together for quite a while here, right? Just doing different
Yeah.
projects, doing different companies, just kind of just like I don't know, just kind of going through the world of tech together, especially in Detroit, has evolved all over all these years. So
I
what
wear
I'm
my Detroit versus everybody today.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Today though, I'm super excited because we're actually going to be talking about like something that's kind of like really close to my heart, which is really technical founders, which I personally think we don't give them enough support. And quite honestly, I don't know enough of them, to be honest. Most of the people I talk to are non-technical founders. So, if you're a technical founder, hit us up, like send us a message, follow us, tell us what you're doing. Because we want to highlight you and bring you on this program. But anyway,
Yeah.
Jessica, I
Um
kind of just bombed. I just kind of jumped into things. So sorry.
No, it's good. In the same respect, I guess I could say. So yeah, I'm Jessica Vaughn and I am obviously other half of this duo, but um yeah, you're right when you say like, okay, we've been working on all these different projects and like some of that does, I guess, start into startup territory, even though it's not necessarily like maybe traditional tech startup, but like just like that entrepreneurship space. And there's a lot more to it than just, those traditional tech startups that we see, although that might be more what we're thinking about today. But I mean, we have started the nonprofit, we started, a conference and a lot of other like educational programs and things like that. So I think there's more to be said about just like there's a lot more opportunity out there to be a founder in a lot of different ways. And some of those things might vary a little bit, but a lot of it is like the same type of mindset, the same type of environment and stuff like that. So for me, I know most of my professional, if not honestly, all my professional experience as a developer has been through startups. So whether that be as an engineer for a startup, I've been also like freelanced and worked with startups to kind of like be the person helping them build out a platform. And then I've worked with educational startups as well as like technical startups. So this is like the world I love to live in, I guess. And I know you probably have some similar background as well as far as different types of companies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, most of the stuff I've done personally has been around trying to I call machines, build little machines that generate money, and a lot of these little machines have been based on open source projects, and where I kind of built something very technical, and I sold it, and or I sell it. I still do this by the way. So that's where I'm kind of focused on is like how do we get more of these people that are technical founders building software that they can sell, and if maybe they don't become like a large software company, but they're able to generate a nice amount of money selling software that they build. And I think it's a unique situation when you have a technical person be a founder of of a company. And I want to talk about like a particular segment of technical founders that I want to kind of focus on. But that doesn't necessarily exclude all the other types of technical founders. But I'm more focused on open source slash software based technical solutions. I mean, there's all kind of technical like things you can build and hardware based things, but I'm not talking about all of those because I'm not a hardware engineer. I'm not a mechanical or electrical engineer. I'm a software guy, so I'm going to talk from that lens.
Okay, I think that's a good, like, segue into what do we think is like more of the definition of the technical founder? Because, like you said, there's different arenas that you might get into, but like, what are some of like the fundamental, I guess, aspects of what it means to be a technical founder?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be a technical founder, you obviously need to, and I'm talking about software technical founder, you need to be able to, one, you got to have the hunger, right? You want to be able, if you have the hunger and you want to actually build a piece of software that you can sell and you have the skill to do it, that to me is someone that has the, you know, has the the I guess you could say the all with the within them. I'm trying to think of the word I want to say here. It's like they have it in them. They can actually do it, without like depending on somebody else for
Yeah,
building up the actual the technical portion of their product. So like for example, like right now I deal with a lot of folks that are like non-technical founders. Like they have a great idea, but they don't have the technical skill set in order to like build it. You know what I mean? So
right.
I think and I think that's cool. Technical founders, I mean, non-technical founders has obviously a lot of skills because they're able to like, have a vision of what they want to build without necessarily building it. In this case, I'm talking about somebody that has the skill set and they know what they want to build, but they also may be lacking the skills, the business side of it, right? So,
Right.
but my argument is that if you know how to build the technical aspect of it and the way the internet works today, you can distribute what you're trying to build on the internet pretty quickly. And if it actually has legs or it has a unique value proposition that people kind of like um you know jump on top of, they could potentially be very successful without really having a huge business background. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from because obviously we're not talking about the non-technical founder side of things today, but something that we've been talking about a lot recently is like the idea that, and again, this is me having gotten more experience and education into startups from actually living the startup life and seeing how things work behind the scenes. Um, a lot of times you need to understand the problem space you're trying to go into and have that, foundational aspect. So again, anybody could come up with a good idea, but if that person doesn't have some kind of stake in the game as far as how to make that idea come to life, whether it is knowing the industry, whether it is having the technical, acumen and being able to build something that's unique. But just you have to have some kind of skin in the game. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about that. If they may not, be in the bay where it's like you kind of just see how a lot of this stuff works firsthand. So yeah, as far as technical founders, I don't know. It's interesting for you to highlight the open source side of things too in the actual software because I feel like it's a lot of like build a product, um, or build, some type of a service, but I don't know, maybe SaaS or software as a service would count in this category um, of building software.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I just want to build a tool, right? I just want to
Hmm.
build a very simple tool and find an audience for that particular tool. I'm trying to think of a name of a tool that everybody would kind of like, know about that was kind of built that way. Besides like the things that kind of grew huge, such as web browsers and things of that nature. But
Hmm.
like one that comes to hand and comes like comes to mind right now, and a lot of people don't probably realize it, but Curl. So
Mhm.
Curl is a very very popular known tool for being able to basically access web pages from the command line. Like
Right.
it's a like like every project, every OS has curl available for their platform.
Right.
And people may say, well, how does curl is like free on every like Linux platform out there. You can go download it. How do they make money? Well, they have a different strategy, right? So they get funding from all these companies, sponsorships, things of that nature, in order to keep evolving curl. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you can build a company in a very non-traditional way, right? So you could put out this little tool, it can become very popular. You can monetize that tool via sponsorships. I mean, that's to me is an interesting approach that people don't talk about a lot.
Nobody talks about that. I mean, I'm not gonna say nobody, but it's just like, you get the traditional, like, okay, I'm gonna make a service, next Uber or something like that. I'm gonna build a product. And it's, I mean, I didn't think about something like Curl because as a developer, most of us end up using Curl one way or another if we do a lot of stuff on the command line. But I never thought about like how do they exist as a tool, and if they have some type of monetization or anything like that. So I'm really open to this side of like what you've been talking about, which is how do we start to, I think when it comes to developers, a lot of times we'll tell you like, okay, you can monetize your knowledge of being a developer around freelancing or um maybe building a product, and less around like what if you just build a tool, a really good tool, or a really good library, or a really good framework, or whatever the case may be. How can you actually build around that? Which I think would actually open up a lot more technical founders, because most of the time I think a lot of people, I don't want to speak for everybody, but when I think about starting a startup, so to speak, I think about the whole like having to grow an entire business, right? Like you said, we think about that traditional, like, okay, Uber is a startup, right? At a grander scale. I don't think about like, oh, this one open source project that I'm really passionate about, that's really in my technical niche that I know a lot about and would love to put a lot of time into. I don't think about making that, a startup, so to speak.
Yeah, I think people just look at it as, oh, that's another framework. And
They say like side project. It could be a side project. It's your hobby, which is fine, but it's like nobody's ever like that's also an avenue for, you know.
yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of really figuring out like a a software, you know, framework solution, and figure out what is the monetization strategy for it. And this it's like anything else. Like right now I'm looking at the guy who created React, right? We all
Mhm.
know who React is. This is a very popular JavaScript library. They have about 20 employees, and they're making about these numbers are never around the internet, so who knows how much money they're making. What it says here is making like $1 million, but I think they're probably making more than that at this point. But that's just off of a library, right? That they built.
Mhm.
I mean, and probably people, tons of people have contributed to as well. I don't know. I'm just going through here while we talk and just looking at open source projects that that generate revenue, right? Um, but again, it doesn't necessarily need to be an open source project. I mean, I
Right.
I like that. It could be just a closed source project that you build and you distribute, and maybe it has a trial component to it, and once the trial ends, people have to go buy a license. I don't know. All I'm trying to say is that, um, to your point, I think is that we all think about building these huge SaaS companies, that has like a two-sided marketplace and blah blah blah. But sometimes, you can just take time to build something super simple, and that will give you a small revenue stream that you can use to build this bigger thing down the road. So it's just, I just think it's levels to it.
I mean, it's even the second aspect of it, we talked about that. That was the other idea I had for today for us to talk about, but it falls in that same category because you brought this up before about distributing software, and I'm like, and you said something about posting it or publishing it through Amazon. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, why am I just not hearing about this? Like, I don't know. It's just I feel like these are two mysterious realms that maybe, like I said, it will open up and expand more people that could see themselves as a technical founder. So I know there's a lot we could get into. We do want to think about today, like talking about why might somebody become a founder, and also like the importance of cultivating our Black technical founders. In particular, of course, it's this Detroit Black Tech, this hacking with the homies. So we we are always thinking about that whenever we kind of bring stuff to the community. So I don't know where you want to start with the like why become a founder overall, or do you want to get into like cultivating the founders as well?
Yeah, I mean, why to become a founder? I mean, so I think it just gives you freedom, right? Freedom to go and explore and live life on your terms. I mean, that's at the bottom line. Really doesn't have anything to do with being a technical founder or anything like that. Just being in general, starting a company gives you that flexibility because at the end of the day, I think technology is a really a young person's game, right? And I think that I believe if early on in your career, if you can take the time to figure out how can I build some type of product that can provide me some type of reoccurring revenue stream, so that you don't have to work so hard. Or if you just don't, if you want to switch careers and you don't want to be a programmer or a software engineer anymore, you can go do something else. But I just truly believe that even if you're working for a company, go build something that generates some level of revenue. And again, it doesn't have to be some massive SaaS application out there.
Right.
It can simply be a framework or something that people can reuse, that will get you some revenue and notoriety.
And to that point, it's kind of a side topic, but pay attention to your employment contracts. And if you don't really read those in depth, I know not everybody reads everything they sign. You should understand like non-competes in your employer contract, because you want to make sure that anything you are creating for yourself, that your company does not end up having the rights to take ownership over that IP. So that I obviously am not a legal expert in any way, shape, or form, but that's one thing that I know that earlier on I already, maybe because I started out working for a coding boot camp, and like that was the first one of the first startups, if not the first startup I actually worked for. Probably not the first, but that was one of the first like startups I worked for. So then when I first moved on from that job into any other type of teaching opportunities, I always was very conscious of the non-competes because they will tell you like what companies can you work for and not work for within a certain period of time. But also when you get on the software side, it can be like what technical content that you make or what IP that you make, whether or not the company has claims ownership over it. And you'll be surprised because sometimes the things that they can claim ownership over, depending on what you signed, could even be things that you work on your own time, on your own computer, especially if it overlaps the same industry or the same, if it's some in some way competitive. But I just want to throw that out there because I've been talking to somebody else about that recently as well. But I'm like, I know that's the first thing I care about when I look at the contract. Can I do my own thing without y'all trying to take ownership over it?
Yeah, that's really, really true. Um, yeah, I gotta get better at that myself. Actually, I just kind of a lot of times I just go for it, and because most people aren't really paying attention to what you're doing. But you have a great point. I mean, you
Yeah, it
should
depends
really,
on who you work for. Because if you
yeah,
work in the startup space
yeah,
now, right? Like I'm talking about me working at companies that might have had less than 20 people up to
Mm,
maybe like being in like the first 100 of a bigger tech startup. So
got
they
you.
get kind of finicky about IP and stuff like that. Cause again, it's startup life. So they still trying to get to sustainability and whatever, still proving out their business model, honestly, a lot of times. So they're a little bit more a little bit more strategic about being like, hey, wait, and then they might pay attention, more direct attention to you because when you're posting your stuff on LinkedIn, for example, and you literally, the CEO can literally see your LinkedIn post. You talk
Right.
to the CEO regularly, like you
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
just because I've been in that space, so that's why my mind automatically goes there. But it doesn't surprise me that it's like not everybody even knows what their non-compete is or if they have one.
No, that's a good point. And here goes the other thing. What I think about when you're a technical founder, like, I've built now probably a few different projects, a couple that actually were really successful. And it's amazing when people actually start using your stuff in other countries.
Oh,
And,
okay.
people start wanting to buy support agreements from you or want to buy your services to kind of help, because typically if you're building this piece of software, they're going to want the person who built it typically to help them install it, configure it, update it, modify it, or whatever. So I think it just opens you up to like globalization, right? It's like
Mhm.
you got all these people. It's so funny whenever I wake up and I see somebody from Israel or Italy that's using this or trying to figure out how to use this piece, and they want help. Now, the bad thing about this is that if you're doing open source, um, the software is free, right? At least that's the in the beginning, because that's the kind of the key to open source, is that's why people love open source, that the source code is available. But that doesn't mean that you can't build um, you know features on top of it that are not available for free. Sometimes
Right.
the open source piece is just a way to get your software out there, distribute it, get it popular, get people using it. Sometimes they say get people pregnant with it, right? And then, and then at some point, you can say, "Hey, I have a new couple of options in this new release, and these options here are something that you have to buy a subscription for." And if you've shown value over time, I people will find, well, I mean, they won't like it per se, because because they'll be like, why can't everything be open source? But the people who are your customers, not users, but your customers who see value in it, will have no problem, you know, paying for it.
That's I just was writing notes because I'm like, this gives it's a couple like maybe offshoot topics we could cover around, some like supportive materials. But then of course we also do have the Hacker House program, which we are going to get into talking about that shortly. But just kind of cycling back around the importance of cultivating Black technical founders in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of Black technical founders. Well, first, I think we have a lot of people that are, software developers, engineers, and things of that nature, and they want to work for a startup, or they want to become a CTO of a startup, which is all fine, which is great. I think the thing that gets you prepared to be a CTO, I think, is getting in the trenches and trying to start your own company,
Mhm.
build something that people want, and sell it. And then that gives you that, to me, that's like the best training you can be for a CTO. Because if you're a software engineer, yes, you have skills, but you don't necessarily, I personally think that you're still lacking. You have a gap in your knowledge
Right.
when you start saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to be the CTO of this company." It's just not about the technical aspects of it. It's about like making sure you're challenging the CEO on making sure their vision has some level of checks and balances around what technically is possible, what is feasible to happen, does it make sense for it to happen, is it a will it actually be something that will generate money, or will it be something that actually will cost the company money? So
Right.
all these things I think you learn when you go off and you start building your own software company. I just think it's just a great type of learning experience.
Noel says, I really like learning about paths to become a CTO and things like that. I agree with you though, because I would say that for me, I have a lot more of a product mindset now from working at a startup where I have more visibility and insight into product development, feature development, R&D, architecture, like the system design overall, but also still trying to figure out who the customer base was and what their needs were. And like, it was still a lot more of the higher level aspects of bridging the gap between our tech and what we were, hopefully going to do. And that was really insightful just having that type of, experience. But like you said, most of the time, especially as a software engineer, we don't really see all of those levels to what's happening behind the scenes. A lot of times, some teams don't even, as an engineer, you might not even have any say in what kind of tickets, you pick up from the board. A lot of that conversation has already been had by the time it gets down to you. So, being able to take a step out of, your day to day, build something from the ground up and see what are all the considerations you have to make. Um, I found that that's something that frustrates me a lot. And I have to remind myself of this because it frustrates me a lot to see like software developers complaining about software in ways that I feel they should be a little bit more flexible and open-minded about. But like I said, I have to remind myself I've been able to like put more of a product or like, over higher level thought process on because of a lot of experiences that I've had where it's like you complaining about a feature that is like, if you stop and think about it, how would you implement this feature, right? Like, I don't know. It's a different world to be in. So, um,
It is. It
are,
it it, it definitely is.
um, when it comes to our community in general, like, do you feel like there's different opportunities that we might have, or like, how do we bridge the gap, or how do we start to bridge the gap? Um, as us being Detroit Black Tech or any type of programs that wants to support Black technical founders.
Yeah, so I think no, I haven't seen any program that just be like, "Hey, I want to support technical founders." It's always about like the founder, right? It doesn't necessarily focus in on you being technical. Now, once you get into the program, they want to basically classify you. Are you a technical founder or a non-technical founder? Um, but I'm more concerned about really trying to grow the technical founder.
Mhm.
Um, because I think that's the person that gets left behind a lot. Because there's a lot of programs for non-technical founders. Like they got tons and tons of stuff for non-technical founders. But I feel like people who have the skill set, um, they're not necessarily encouraged per se to go build. Like for example, I go back to, you don't hear too many of these stories anymore. Like I remember hearing the story of Instagram, right? So these guys weren't even software engineers actually. They just basically was like, hey, I want to basically be able to create better pictures on my mobile device. And they're like, there has to be a way of doing it. And they just went and they just figured it out, and it became a success. And then they got acquired from to Facebook for millions, billions of dollars. I don't know how much it was, but um, I want to see more of that happen in the Black community. I want to see software. And I know that story was more about non-technical people, but I think there's a bunch of really technical people that could do something such as that. I just don't think we really celebrate that or encourage that enough.
I agree. I mean, so the thing that comes to mind for me is a lot of times software engineers are written off in non-technical types of opportunities or roles or skill sets, um, as if by nature being a computer science person means that you don't know how to communicate, you don't understand marketing, or you don't, like it's kind of like, I don't know, that's not true. And definitely some people might fall into the category of being more like heads down, headphone. Okay, but that's not just something for people that are computer scientists. And kind of in the same regard that I feel like sometimes we might self-select out of things because we're already being discouraged into going into certain realms or feeling like we don't have necessarily have the skill set to fill out, a CEO role versus a CTO role or versus an individual contributor type of role. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I would like to see a lot more encouragement around that. Sometimes it is like you said, seeing people who already are doing it and kind of being intentional about us cultivating those founders in particular, making opportunities. Um, but yeah, I feel like if I was like sitting around the day to day, it's a lot of smart people that I've worked with that really they could also be great startup founders, but it's more like, "Oh, no, you're more of a thinker, like, you're not a visionary," and it's like, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I run into a lot, is where, well, in my career, people necessarily, I wasn't like, I wasn't fighting for a CEO role or fighting to become a startup, to be a founder or any of that nature. I I just I just I like staying underneath the radar. I think if you're, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. If you're an introvert, I think you can use that to your advantage because you can build great stuff and you can distribute it on the internet fairly easily. And you don't necessarily have to do a lot of talking. Maybe you do some videos or you do some podcasts around what you're building, or you do an Instagram story about what you're building every day. You do a little film, a little video about what you're building. I mean, there's just so many ways that technical founders could build a company, um, or build a product and become popular without actually have to get out in front and talk and all that good stuff. Because I think, like you said, Jessica, that's some of the things that I get pushback on with technical founders. They're like, I don't want to start a company. I just want to like work for a company. I'm introverted. I don't want to have the stress of all that. I just think that there's ways and opportunity, um, to be a founder without um, all those things that kind of stress you out.
Yeah, and there's trade-offs too. I mean, I get a lot of people being like, they would not believe me when I say that I'm an introvert because I do stuff that is like, you know, I tend to go towards the leadership roles, but that doesn't mean that I'm not introverted, you know what I mean? It's just a trade-off because to me right now, for example, just to talk about what you were saying, like I would rather have my own product that I have a lot more control over my schedule, what I'm doing, the thought process behind it, and making a lot more of the decisions versus having to sit in a team space with 50 people. Like, I mean, come on, it's a trade off. You know what I mean? So there's definitely so much value in just seeing those other opportunities, like you said. And we do have so many distribution methods nowadays. So you can kind of create the world that you're looking for. It's not to say it's going to be perfect because it's a challenge always when you are doing anything in the entrepreneurship realm, but it's just I don't know. I'm like, just because that's basically the point that I'm trying to make is like just because you're an introvert, that don't mean nothing. That don't have nothing to do with whether or not you could be a founder. It's just different avenues, and so not really trying to culture like kind of get rid of that stigma around what software engineers are quote unquote capable of in the business space.
Yeah, I mean, man, man, it's so crazy. I think there's so many different ways to make money here. I mean, you can sell content. You can, you can, for example, there's open source projects that I love to death that I have just added a little UI to,
Right.
and that UI has became very popular because people don't want to actually learn or read about all the different like switches and configuration parameters you need to do in order to get it going. So I just think that it's not always about starting something from scratch. Sometimes it's about like building on top of it. And back to that curl example, really, there's a tons of applications that are built around curl, like or they've leveraged that library to to create their product. So I don't think what I'm trying to say is like you don't necessarily need to you know you know, basically create things from scratch.
Right.
Sometimes you can just go off, find a gap, and just build something on top of that gap. And people are willing to pay for these gaps that exist to make their life easier.
Makes sense. And we did have one question, so I want to answer this one before we go into talking more about like Hacker House and how that kind of fits into this.
Mhm.
So, Clark said, "This is an illuminating conversation. Please discuss the contrast of how investors see technical versus non-tech founders."
Yeah, so I'm not an investor, but from what I see is that in the marketplace, um, people are betting on the team in a lot of cases, right? So,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? So, if the team consists of a software engineer that built the product, um, I think they're going to see a lot more value in that person versus someone else that maybe they're a visionary and they didn't build the product, right? So they have to hire people, things of that nature. They have a great idea, but they don't own the IP, or well, they own the IP, but they don't own the person that's
Right.
that built the IP, or the person that built the IP is not part of the company. So if I was an investor, right, which I am, but at a very low scale, um, I would be looking at if how can we iterate on this? Who has the knowledge of how the product work? Can we quickly pivot or add enhancements? And if that's a technical founder that's running the company, I would bet all my chips on that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier about, just the idea that when it comes to starting a company, you have to have some skin in the game when it comes to whatever problem space you are going into. And nowadays, I would say it's a lot more towards actually building tech products. And so, it's like you said, uh, I know for me it's AI and machine learning right now. Like most people know that's what I'm focusing on. And when I have seen other, panels and things where people are like, okay, what are you looking for? What are the investors looking for as far as the founders? Especially with AI and machine learning as a prime example, it's not just can you put a layer over Chat GPT, right? Or over a GPT open AI model, but if your whole business is actually based on the underlying model, do you have the skill set? Do you have the data? Do you have some type of proprietary, training process or something of that nature that is going to, like you said, inform whether you can scale, pivot, build new features, and kind of evolve that company over time. So, they were really calling out some of those aspects just in that industry, overall. So it's like, of course, like we mentioned, you can definitely get into the whole like building layers on top of things, but the further I would say maybe the further you're getting into just being like building a product itself overall, they're going to be like, okay, well, down the line, are you the right person to solve this problem?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And the things I like the most is getting hardware and software to work together, right? So that is kind of the sweet spot. Let's imagine you have a piece of hardware that that you know that you want to I don't know, add some software to. And if you can figure out how to combine those two. So let me give an example. Like at my old office, I used to have a way to scan into the office, but either use a link on your phone, you can click it. I don't know, you remember Jessica, you can get into the door. Well, so I bought that RFID reader from China. It actually was basically a HTTP client. So basically, whenever somebody scanned the door, it would actually send an HTTP request with the URL of the card number that was scanned.
Mhm.
And then from there, I could, I could build some logic to say, oh yeah, this card I recognize, and let them into the door. Um, and I spent time just building that, and I never monetized it or anything like that. But I really like those type of solutions. Is there something that you can build to fit a gap that's there, that's needed in the marketplace? Back in the day it was even easier. Now it's super complicated because everybody's built all this stuff already. But
Right.
so every year it gets more and more complicated to find these gaps. But let me give one more example. Like and this is the fear of building these gaps. This is the kind of the downside of building these gaps. So I have this Canon EOS camera, and for some reason, when I updated my OS, the software that you download from Canon to allow it to be used as a web browser or use it as a webcam doesn't work anymore. And so I went online and found this little company that built this software. It was 30 bucks. I think forever. 30 bucks that allowed my camera to work with my OS and Microsoft Teams and other strategy. So that's what I'm talking about. Like I'm talking about like these building these little small pieces of software that you can sell to a lot of people. 'Cause,
Right.
almost everybody has well, not everybody, but there's a
A
large
lot of
number of
people.
people have Canon cameras. And quite honestly, so the software, so I had an update to the OS. So I used that software for a while. OS came, and now Canon, so the software stopped working. And then Canon came out with a native version of the software. So it's probably going to put this company out of business. But
Maybe, but maybe not. Cause honestly, Canon, those maybe, but those updates don't be coming out enough for
they
me
don't. They don't.
personally.
But my point being though is that so what if they get
Yeah.
put out of business temporarily? Because know what? They just sold that to probably 100,000 people, whatever. I don't know what
Right,
the
right.
numbers are. You've made money from it, and now you can invest it in the next thing. So that's what I'm saying around going back to your original question, like why do you want to do this? Is that it just allows you to build reoccurring revenue stream that you can use for a long period of time, or however long this product is hot. Take that money and go invest in another product or something else, some real estate, whatever. But that's what I'm talking about. Like this is how we kind of can
Yeah.
build generational wealth.
Yeah. No, you're right. Um And it's funny, I have something I think I have, like, Sparko Cam or something like that. It's similar to what you were talking about,
Mhm.
and I had that before Canon had actually even released the software that made it so that you could use your camera as a webcam easily. So they've been around for a long time, but then another thing that they do is they support other cameras, right? So it's a very niche software, but then they branch out and can, like, add, compatibility for different options and stuff like that. So you see evolutions, you see um, maybe something gets phased out or it gets acquired and then you can move on to the next thing. So I'm glad we're just talking about all these different avenues. And I do want to spend some time kind of getting into what your vision is for the hacker house, since this has kind of like been the thing we've been tinkering on, I guess, or toiling on, working on behind the scenes.
Yeah, so let's get into it a little bit. I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see here. Let's see, present and share screen, and here you go. All right. So So, all right. So the Hacker House is really came out of the fact that bought this little house on the east side of Detroit. Very cool place to hang out during the summertime. But what's going to happen during the wintertime, right? Um, so it gave me the opportunity to start thinking through like, wouldn't it be great to see black technical founders living in this house and just working on a problem and trying to build a software based product. I'm not gonna say solution because solution makes it sound like a SaaS thing, but this a software working on a software problem, trying to create a very simple but niche piece of software that they could release as open source software. And the whole goal here is to build something disruptive that can become viral. And then at some point, you can start monetizing that software. And when I say at some point, almost immediately, like there's nothing that stops you from when you release it, when you put something out on GitHub, or you yeah, if you get some on GitHub, there's so many different ways you can monetize. Now GitHub has sponsors, capabilities, so somebody can sponsor you. You can actually sell books or training to it. But the whole goal here is to get people, software engineers, building software that they can start selling immediately. And really the target here is somebody who has a computer science type of person, um, focus on Wayne State, Lawrence Tech, Oakland University, and University of Michigan. We want Detroit founders, so we require the founder to have at least lived in Detroit for the last 5 years. Um, we want them to understand what the business problem is that they're trying to solve, versus just building software, right? So, I mean, it sounded like when we started talking, it was like, oh yeah, go build some software, and we'll figure out how it works. We do want it to be somewhat like we do want to make sure they're building software that someone wants. So we do want them to do, um, our main our preference would be to go through Tech Town, do what they have called a Start Studio program, Start Studio Discovery, and at least figure out what their unique value proposition is. So, what's the main thing that will get a person interested in buying the software? And then from there, we'll have an application process that we'll have so they can so we can like obviously intake a bunch of people who are interested. But at the end of the day, we're going to select 2 or 3 companies. They'll live there for 3 months. The founders won't have to worry about their expenses. That way they can be heads down building their software. So we'll give them some support. We'll give them some coaches to support them. But what's going to be provided is their rent, water, electricity. They'll get dinner once a week. Kind of think of it as the technical founders dinner. So they'll come around the table and just talk about what problems they've been having over the week. They'll get housekeeping once a week, laundry once a week, a little monthly stipend, and then landscaping maintenance, because this is going to be winter, so we want to make sure snow gets removed, all the stuff
Got
that
a
needs to
shovel, man. Got a
happen.
shovel.
Right. And the whole goal, we're targeting the first cohort to be in January 2024. So we'll be opening applications in November 2023. So that's kind of in a nutshell, Jessica, what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And like I said, for me, I love thinking about the mindset of it and like changing the dynamic of how our software developers and software engineers are thinking about the software, not just from the technical aspect, but like you said, who is the users, what's the problem you're solving, and what's the monetization strategies that you can take, because that's like a more of a holistic, higher level picture to the different work that we all already do. So I'm excited about it for sure.
Yeah, me too, man. This would be cool. Plus, is this a room that this is time to geek out? I'm really, interested in seeing what people apply and what kind of software they're looking to build, and and just really try and figure out how to iterate this program. This will be the first time us doing it. We'll figure out what works, what doesn't work, what kind of problems people are trying to solve. I mean, we're not on the West Coast, right? So I'm assuming the problems are going to be a little bit different, a little bit more focused on inclusion. I'm assuming, so it'd be interesting what people come up with.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. So, we do have the page up on our website, but we can share the link to that. And then, I think we said that applications will open in November, but we can also get something going where, folks can kind of express interest. If you have questions about it, maybe we can do an info session later on, throughout the year. But definitely want people to be aware of this, that is upcoming. And we are looking to start in January, right, of 2024. So, it's right around the corner, kind of. So if that's something that you think is interesting, or something you would want to pursue for sure, then keep a lookout for updates that we have in regards to that program overall. I know we're kind of getting towards our hour. Do you have any kind of like last minute thoughts you want to cover before we go into our shameless plug?
No, no, I think we did a good job in covering the stuff we had to add on the list.
Yeah, and there was a couple items that kind of came up to me that made me think like, okay, like I said, there's some offshoot conversations we can have, but also it gets me excited about just kind of getting the programming ready for the Hacker House too, because um I do think that as far as us, hacking with the homies, DBT, we could think about some helpful things for developers that want to be technical founders, such as, for example, how should you be like reading the non-competes? What do people's non-competes actually look like? Even if you don't go to the full legal side of it, but just understanding like, when you sign your contracts, what areas are you looking for and what those can look like from company to company. Because I do think that sometimes you may have only seen your a non-compete or something of that nature in a certain form, and you would be surprised how many different variations there can be. And maybe that is something that you want to consider if you're like looking for a new job, for example, and you want to negotiate with your company on what they do and don't have rights and ownership over. So there was some other ideas that kind of came to mind as we were talking about potential other follow-ups that we could do just to kind of help inform getting into that world.
Yeah, definitely talk about some more monetization strategies. We haven't really talked about that type of stuff. Like like I think one of the things you hit on was basically basically taking your project and putting it into a marketplace, AWS marketplace, Azure marketplace, making it super easy for people to be able to go do one click install of whatever you're building, and that's a way of monetizing because people at when you set up in the marketplace, you get paid when people use it. And sometimes people are real, people are, I don't know, what do you call it? Open source snobs, I guess, because they're like, oh, this is open source, so I shouldn't have to pay for it. That is a way that you can people seem to feel more comfortable paying um for open source software that way. So indirectly paying for it. So that'd be a great topic, I think, at some point to talk to.
Definitely, I added that to my list. So as we wrap up today, what do you have anything for shameless plug outside of our hacker
Yeah, yeah,
house?
yeah. So many of you know that uh, at Tech Town, Entrepreneur in Residence, and there is a MVP program there where we actually um, assign a developer to a founder so they can work on building a minimal viable product. And that program is kicking off next week. I do need some more MVP developers. So the program is kicking off on the 19th. So if you are listening to this before July 9th, before, and I won't just say before July 9th, like by July 17th, Monday, let me know if you're interested, and I will give you a call, and we can chat it up.
Definitely. I look forward to seeing anybody that will participate. Of course, I will be one of the developers this time around again. I usually am. So I'm excited to see who we get to work with this time. The founders are always awesome as well. And as far as my shameless plug, I guess I'll say, what am I doing right now? I don't know. I'm doing all this stuff. Um, oh, I started a newsletter, so I'm planning on kind of getting that out there to folks. But I did
Ooh, what's
put
the newsletter about?
just different content that I have coming out throughout the months, cuz now I'm like I'm doing podcasts and live streams, and it's here, there, and everywhere. So I kind of wanted to centralize a lot of the stuff that I've been working on so I can share resources. Like I had talked about on Train X podcast, I've been working on a Notion board that has a lot of AI and ML resources, for example. So I just been trying to find a way to centralize the stuff that I want to share and kind of support the dev community. So I'm working on that right now. So we shall see. I haven't come up with a cadence. Maybe like it'll be biweekly or monthly or something like that. Nothing to like flood an inbox, but
Hmm.
just it's hard for me to keep in touch with everybody who is like actually interested in the different stuff that I've been working on. So, but I definitely appreciate the support. But yeah, so I'll put the link in the chat, I guess, and share it in the notes. But um, yeah, I'm definitely branching out to put some more content out there for y'all in the AI machine learning space. So we are day 51 today, I think, of 100 Days of Code. So
What? That's what's up.
by the end of August, I'll be off of that challenge and hopefully better for it.
Well, I think it should be exciting to see what yeah, share with us when you get off of what you learn. Maybe that'll be a hacking with the homies session. Just talk through,
Yeah, that
or
would be
maybe a train
fun.
next. Maybe train next is maybe a
Yeah,
better, probably a better
true.
avenue to do that. But still, it'd be interesting to see what you come up with.
Yeah, it's been fun, and I have to say I have had folks like join my Discord community and stuff like that. So it's been really great just to have those like that supportive community of folks that's also trying to go through a similar challenge. So I'm excited about that. I'll definitely share more of the resources I've been creating for folks. I always want to support anybody's educational journey. I feel like if I jump over a hurdle and you're right behind me, I'm not gonna leave the hurdle for you. I'm just gonna, that's probably not good for a racing perspective, but in life,
Right.
it's no reason for people to keep tripping over the same things over and over again. So, that's my mindset. So that's what I have for this month.
Well, good. Well, this was exciting. I'm glad we were able to talk about some of the stuff for technical founders. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. So I guess that's a wrap for episode 4.
We will be going live pretty soon with our publishing on all podcasting platforms. So, whenever or wherever you are listening to us, it would be really great if you would share, or leave a comment how you like this episode or other ideas that you would like us to consider. And even if it's not specific to the actual episode, y'all know I go live almost every week. You can always let me know, and I can probably fit it into one of the different shows. So, more to come, but we'll see you all with the next episode.
All right, folks. Boom.